Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video I will show you how to use the objective-oriented programming in MATLAB environment. I will create a little class called worker at which I will show you how to use public properties, private properties, dependent properties, and also how to create a constructor and the public methods of this class. And moreover, I will show you also how to use a static method to create a counter of the objects of our class. And in the end of this video I will also provide a little test of our class. Okay, so let's get started with it. So I create a new script in here, okay, and now I create my worker class. So first of all I need to put some comment here. Of course it's not needed, but it's really convenient to have some comments here too. If you later have a lot of files, you can read about it here. Okay, and the keyword is class def. Okay, so that starts the definition of our class, and now it's a name of a class, worker. Okay. Okay, so this is a block of a class definition, and now I will create the block structure of this object. The object in programming is a specific construct which provides you possibility to store data and the methods which work on these particular sets of data, and also the results of some computations in a single object. So it is really nice. Okay, so let's get started. First I create the public properties. Okay, and this is here I will create fields, and those fields are most like the fields in a structure, so that access is public by default. So here I do not define any specific access, and by default it's public. And the only difference between this and the fields of a structure is that you are unable to add some field to the object from the outside of the class. And it is very good because you don't have a possibility to make a mistake and create another field which you don't want. So start with it. Name of my worker, age, last score, okay, total salary, and for example bonus. Okay, so those are public fields, and those data will be visible from outside of the class. Now I will create a private property. So for this reason I need to create another properties block, set the access to private, okay, access, private, okay, multiplier, for example 1.2. The supplement for a salary will be calculated using this multiplier. Okay, so I have public properties, private property, and also dependent property. Dependent, okay. There are also another types of properties in MATLAB, for example properties protected, but for now let's get only with this to don't have too much mess for now. Okay, so last performance, and last performance will be calculated based on the last scores of our worker. And the idea of dependent variable is that it is calculated during creation of our object. So when I will create my object in the very beginning of my main code, it will be those data last scores will be provided to a constructor, and this value will be calculated during creation of my object, and it will be assigned here. It is particularly useful if you, for example, work with data sets and you need to make some pre-processing of those data. I will also provide another video and I will create a class for work with data sets, and there will be a lot of usage of this, which is really useful, but for now just the basic information. Okay, so we have a variable, so we have a property which will be calculated during creation of our object. Okay, and now I start to define methods, and okay, I do not set any access here, because by default it will be now a public access. And the first method I need to create is a constructor. Okay, so I start doing this by a keyword function. Okay, and now the constructor is a function which returns this particular object of this class. So here I use the keyword this and then the name of the class, worker. Okay, and then the name of the constructor, name of this function, needs to be the same as the name of the class. So worker. Okay, and now the arguments of the constructor. So name, age, basic salary, and last SRC. Okay, the name here don't need to be the same as the name here, so this is why I just write it in this way. Okay, and what needs to be done first in our constructor is just the assignment of those arguments to those fields in here. Okay, and how to do it? In this way. So this, now I'm referred to this particular object of class worker. So this worker dot name, so now I refer to the field name in here. Okay, assign name. Okay, so this is the assignment, and now I can see that here this first argument is already assigned. Okay, so I need to do it a few more times. Okay, so age, basic salary, okay, and now here I need to refer to this name of field. So this is last scores. Okay, but here I need to refer to this name of the argument. Okay, so I've got this assignment. Moreover, I would like to count the number of all object of my class which will be created during my main code execution, and for this reason I need to have something which in another programming languages such as Python or CPP is called a static variable. And the static variable is a variable which is visible for all objects of this particular class, not for this particular object on this class only, like here, like it is about the name, because I can have 3 objects of my class worker and each will have access to its own name. But in case of a static variable, all the objects will have access to their common value of this static variable. And in this manner, each object will have access, so each object can know how many objects of his class is now in our main code. And each object during its creation need to increase this value by 1 because it's created. Okay, so I put a comment here, static, and now it will not be a static variable, but will be a static method, because in MATLAB to obtain such a functionality you need to use a static method at which you will create the variable which is in a specific type. The type is persistent variable. The persistent variable is a variable which is saved in a workspace during between the execution of the particular function, because in a common way the variables which are created in a function are deleted after the function execution, but the persistent variable will last to the other execution of this function. Okay, so we need to call the static method here. Okay, so we call it. For now I refer to the class worker, not to this worker, because I don't refer to a particular object of this class, but to the class at all. Okay, worker set get static 1. Okay, what is going on here? So this is a name of a function which I will define down here in just a second, and this is an argument. Okay, and this execution will provide us the effect of incrementation this persistent variable in this function. Okay, so now it must be a static method, so I need to create it outside of this method block, because those are the common public method, not the static ones. So here I need to create another methods block. Okay, but this block needs to have this attribute static. Okay, and now I define my function. It will return the variable out, the value will be assigned there. Okay, set get static, this is just the name I defined. Okay, and argument and okay, and now we need to define this persistent variable. Persistent, oh, I'm sorry, the typing mistake. Persistent. Okay, I will call it var. Nice. And what I need to do now, I need to check if this variable empty. If it is, I need to assign a 0 to it. Okay, if is empty. Okay, is empty is a built-in function in MATLAB, and it just check is this variable empty. If it is, then this instruction will be executed, and it is just assign 0 to its variable. Nice. Okay, and now I need to check, do I have the argument here? Why I do it? Because if I would like to increment my value of this persistent variable, which will be my static variable in this concept, then I need to call this function with this argument. And if I call this function without any argument, it will mean that I only want to have access to the current value of this persistent variable. Okay, so how I doing it? If nargin equals 1, okay, nargin is the number of input arguments. This is also the inbuilt functionality, built-in functionality in MATLAB, and this is the name of the variable which just contains the number of arguments in here. So if it's 1, what I need to do is just increase the value of var, by 1. Okay, so I just increment this value. Else means if there is no, or if there is more, but I do not think about such a situation. Only usage of this function will have one argument or no arguments. So else out var. Okay, so otherwise I assign the value of my persistent variable to my output argument. Okay, nice. So this is my static function which provide the functionality of the counter of my objects of my class, which is actually like a static variable in Python. In Python it is a bit more simple to deal with these static variables. Okay, so this is all what we want to do in our constructor, and now I will show you how to deal with this dependent variable. And as I told you, dependent variable is a variable which dependent property is a property which is compute during the construction of our object. And this is another difference between MATLAB and, for example, Python or C++, because in Python or C++, all what you want to be calculated during the construction of the object must be defined here in a constructor. But in MATLAB you have these dependent properties, and those procedures to calculate those values are defined in a separated functions, the specific type of functions which called getter function. So now I create a getter function. And here function should return this value. Now I use a keyword get dot same name as this value. Okay, and now the argument of this function, which is the worker. The meaning of this is that the function will have access to all the properties of this particular object of this class. Okay, and so my function needs to calculate last performance of my worker based on his last scores. Okay, so it's just to show you how it works. So for example, last performance will be calculated as the arithmetic average, which is calculated by the min function from the last scores vector. It will be some vector of few integers or doubles. So the worker, I refer to this particular object of this class dot last scores. Maybe I've made a typing mistake. Yeah, okay, so that's all. Okay, and this value will be calculated during the creation of my object. So this is the difference between MATLAB and another programming languages. In Python, for example, those operations will be just performed inside of the constructor function. Okay, so we have a getter functionality here also. So now let's define the common public method. I mean the one which we can call during our program. Okay, so function, and now this method will modify our object, because it will calculate the value of bonus for our worker. So if it's modify our object, it needs to return the worker. I mean, this particular object of this class will be returned from this function after the modification. Okay, and now the name of the function, assess worker. Okay, the argument will be the worker. Okay, for example, I can also provide another argument, and here there will be some values of performance of our worker, which we can use in here to assess the worker performance. Okay, so new bonus will be calculated as 0.1 times mean of arc. Okay, just like this. And now we would like to assign this new value of bonus to this field in here. Okay, so the worker, I refer to this particular object of this class, bonus to its field. Okay, new bonus, very simple. Now we should define another function to compute the salary of our worker. So function the worker, because now as well as in here our object will be modified, so we need to return the modified version of this object. Okay, compute salary, the worker. Okay, nice. And here we just compute salary and assign it to this particular field here. So I refer to the worker dot total salary. Okay, and now let's say that we would like to use this private value, okay, as a multiplier. So the worker dot multiplier. In this manner you can see that inside of class our method can access this value, which you will see that outside of our class it's impossible. Okay, times the worker dot basic salary. Okay, so now I refer to basic salary of my worker, which is provided in here in a constructor, and then assign to this field. Okay, plus those 3 dots led me to go to the next line in here. Okay, and now the worker dot basic salary dot the worker bonus. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that the bonus here is just some value calculated based on the worker scores. Those will be a vector of his scores, and this is some value, for example 1.2, so it is multiplied by 0.1, so it is 0.12, and now our worker will have a total salary calculated in this way, that it is the basic salary times the multiplier, so it's 1.2 times basic salary plus 0.12, for example, from this bonus times basic salary. Okay, and this will be a value of a total salary for our worker. The idea here is to show you how to this function can have access to this private value. Okay, let's say that we also would like to have 2 functions, one just to show the multiplier outside of the class. So okay, so in here we do not return anything, because this is just a function which provides us a possibility to display the value of private property outside. So I cannot ask MATLAB to show me the private property from outside of the class, but I can call this function, because this function is public function. So this function, being a public, can be called from outside of the class, and this function, being a method included in this class, can have access to this private property, and in this way I can show the value of private property outside of the class. Okay, and for example I would like also to have a function to change the value of my private property function, but now this function which changed this value will modify my object, so I need to return the modified version of the object. Okay, this argument is needed for a function to have access to the field of the class, and this will be the value I want to assign to my private value of the multiplier. That's all. So for now I think that we should make a little test of this class. Okay, so I open the script and start a test. Okay, so I need to generate some vectors of random data just to have some scores for our workers to deal with. Okay, so I create a tab, initially full of zeros, for example 3 rows and 12 columns. Okay, and now I need to provide some random numbers. Okay, equal 1, 2, 3, and okay. So kth row, all columns. Okay, and this particular syntax with rand function let me to obtain the vector of 12 random numbers, which will be around the value of 1. Okay. So now when I start it, here we can see the table of 12 random numbers, each row, which are around the value of 1. Okay. And now I need to create my workers. So for example, W1 is worker, and now I need to refer to my constructor, which is in here. So I need to give the arguments of name, age, basic salary, and last score. Okay, so let's do it. Name is Mike, age is 25, basic salary is, for example, 2050. Okay, and last score is, for example, from the first row of my tab. Okay, I did not put the semicolon here because we would like to see the effect in here in a command line. Okay, and for example, W2, the worker, Kate, 20, for example, 3,000 for a basic salary, and the second row of my tab. Okay, for results. Okay, I make a section of a code to just start this particular section. Okay. We have these two workers in here. Okay, and as you can see, we have the values here for last performance. Those values were calculated during the creation of the object, and it was defined in here. The last performance was defined as a dependent variable, and the procedure of calculated the value of last performance is defined in here in a getter function. And this is a difference in MATLAB in reference to the other programming languages, because in Python, for example, this procedure would be defined inside of the constructor, but in MATLAB we need to define another functions, call it a getter function in this manner. Okay, so it was calculated during the creation of the object, but our those values, mean the bonus and total salary, aren't calculated till now. Because we define our class in that way that we need to call the functions to do it. So first I would like to define, to calculate the bonus. Okay, so I will call it to my W1. Okay, because my function will modify the worker class, this particular object, so I need to assign the result of this function to W1 again. So okay, so it's W1 dot says worker. Okay, and it needs one argument, which is this vector of my random numbers. Okay, but I would like to show you one thing. Here is the access worker function, and it have two arguments, but I only put the one because this argument is just to have access for this particular field of this class here. So outside of the class I only need to put this one argument, because I don't need to put this outside of the class. Okay, so now I'm doing it. Okay, and as you can see, I have the value of bonus in here. Nice. So I would like to calculate also the total salary for my worker. So compute salary, okay, and now I have no arguments in compute salary because there is only one here, and this is the worker, this particular object of this class. Okay, so I just call it, and now I have the total salary of Mike is $3,282.7. okay, so I call worker dot set get static. This is my function, but I call it without any argument, and as it was defined in here, it should return me the value of persistent variable var, which should be 2, because I have 2 objects of my class worker, and I've got 2 in here. Okay, so this also works properly. In another video I will show you how to create a much more useful class to work with big sets of data collected with in TXT files. It will be really useful class for many people working with data and MATLAB. And of course, give a thumbs up if you want more content like this. Thank you.